It is 6 p.m. here in Cairo. Time for the news bulletin, and we will be starting straight away with the main headlines. Foreign Minister Badr Abdulati, along with the Petroleum Minister, meet with the Cypriot President during a visit to Nicosia. Egypt slams Benjamin Netanyahu's remarks over relocating Palestinians out of the land through the Rafah crossing. And aftershocks jolt Afghanistan after a deadly quake that killed 2,000 people. Minister of Foreign Affairs, Migration and the Egyptian expatriates, Badr Abdulati, and the Minister of Petroleum and Mineral Resources, Karim Badawi, held a meeting with the Cypriot President Nikos Christodoulides in Nicosia. The top diplomat asserted the Egyptian keen interest in boosting close bilateral relations and stressed the importance of deepening cooperation in energy, according to deals signed earlier this year in Cairo. Abdulati also detailed the Egyptian efforts to broker a ceasefire in Gaza and alleviate the suffering of the Palestinian people, warning against the military Israeli expansion in the territory. Meanwhile, foreign ministers of Egypt and Cyprus hailed the distinguished bilateral relations between both countries at a joint press conference following talks in Nicosia. Minister Abdulati and Cypriot counterpart Konstantinos Kambas held political consultations at the start of Abdulati's visit to Cyprus. The Cypriot foreign minister appreciated the Egyptian efforts to help in fighting fires in Cyprus in July, under directives from President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. Abdulati said that Egypt looks forward to more cooperation in meeting political and economic interests of both countries and in boosting the Egyptian-European relations, especially in line with Cyprus's presidency of the European Union Council in 2026. The two top diplomats also tackled the ongoing genocide war in Gaza, with Abdulati hailing Cyprus's supporting stance for the Palestinian cause. Abdulati stressed the importance of ending the Israeli aggression and starvation war in Gaza. The top diplomat reiterated the Egyptian rejection of any attempts aiming at liquidating the Palestinian cause. Foreign Minister Abdulati valued the deep historical relations between Egypt and Cyprus as he met with the Cypriot Parliament Speaker Anita Dimitriou. During the meeting, Abdulati expressed Egypt's keenness on increasing the parliamentary visits, as well as the communication and the mutual activities between both countries. Abdulati said that Egypt is looking forward for more bilateral cooperation in various fields, notably in the economic fields, investment, as well as increasing trade exchange. The meeting also tackled the regional development, especially the situation in the Gaza Strip, as Abdulati reviewed the Egyptian efforts to reach a ceasefire and allow the humanitarian aid into the Strip. He highlighted the role of the European parliaments in supporting the Palestinian legitimate rights. Egypt denounced the reported statements by the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu over relocating Palestinians out of the land, including through the Rafah border crossing between the Gaza Strip and Egypt. A statement of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Migration reiterated the Egyptian condemnation and rejection for any displacement of the Palestinian people outside its land, whether compulsory or non-compulsory. The statement also rejected the attempts to limit the choices for Palestinians down to living under the Israeli fires and systematic starvation or leaving their homeland. The statement said continued Israeli bombardment targeting civilians and the civilian infrastructure and forcing Palestinians to leave the land are attempts to prolong the Israeli escalations deepen instability in the region and to avoid the repercussions of the Israeli violations in Gaza, both on the internal and the external levels. The statement said, these practices are blatant violations of the international humanitarian law and amount to ethnic cleansing, adding that the accountability for these crimes should be enacted on the international levels. The statement reiterated the Egyptian refusal to participate in the injustices against the Palestinians, calling for confronting chaos Israel is sowing in the region, forcing a ceasefire in Gaza, ensuring an Israeli withdrawal from the enclave, and empowering the Palestinian government to operate the crossings into the enclave. Cairo also called on the UN Security Council to provide protection for the Palestinian people and pressuring Israel to end its occupation of the Palestinian territories. The statement added that materializing the Palestinian independent state along the borders of the 4th of June in 1967 is inevitable as it conforms with the right of self-determination, human rights, human logic, and relevant international resolutions. The Palestinian Civil Defense Agency said that 19 people were killed in a series of Israeli occupation strikes in and around the Gaza City. This comes as the Israeli military destroyed the high-rise in Gaza City, while the Defense Minister Israel Katz said in a statement that the bolt has now been removed from the gates of hell in Gaza, vowing to intensify the operations until Hamas accepted the Israeli terms to end the war. According to the Palestinian Health Ministry, the genocide war in Gaza has claimed at least 64,300 Palestinian martyrs. Finland is joining the declaration on a peaceful resolution of the Palestinian cause and the implementation of the two-state solution. The declaration is the result of an international conference at the UN in July hosted by Saudi Arabia and France on the conflict. The first step outlined in the declaration is to end the genocide war in Gaza. Saudi Arabia and France have called on the countries at the United Nations to support the declaration that outlines the tangible, time-bound, and the irreversible steps towards implementing the two-state solution. Unlike some other European nations such as Spain and Norway, Finland has not recognized Palestine as a state. Hezbollah-allied ministers walked out of the Lebanese cabinet meeting called to discuss the efforts to disarm the group. Local media reported that the walkout by the 5 ministers happened as the Lebanese army chief entered the meeting to present a plan for disarming the group. Hezbollah has accused the cabinet of playing into the hands of Israel and the United States. In August, under heavy U.S. pressure and fearing Israel would intensify the strikes, Lebanon's government ordered the army to draw up a plan for disarming Hezbollah by the end of the year. Friday's cabinet session comes amid intensified Israeli airstrikes on southern Lebanon over the past 2 days, which killed at least 5 people. European Union Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas met in Doha with the Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi to seek a negotiated solution to Iran's nuclear program. The meeting came after the European powers last week triggered a deadline for the sanctions to come back into force on Iran for failing to comply with the commitments under the 2015 deal. The talks focused on the range of topics, including access for the International Atomic Energy Agency monitors to the Iranian nuclear sites and the status of Iran's stockpile of the highly enriched uranium. Russian President Vladimir Putin warned that any Western forces deployed to Ukraine would be legitimate targets for the Russian army, as the Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky said that thousands could be sent as part of the peacekeeping force. 24 countries pledged to join the reassurance force on land, at sea and in the air to patrol any agreement to end the war unleashed by Russia's 2022 invasion. Tens of thousands have been killed in 3.5 years of fighting, which has forced millions from their homes and destroyed much of eastern and southern Ukraine. Ukraine attacked the Russian Ryazan oil refinery, as well as the oil depot in the occupied Luhansk region. Regional governors said the debris fell on the grounds of the industrial enterprise after a drone attack, with air defense and electronic warfare systems shooting down 8 drones in the region, but causing no casualties. A previous Ukrainian drone attack forced the Ryazan refinery to halt half its capacity in early August. In another development, the Russian Defense Ministry said that the forces took control of the settlement of Markov in the Donetsk region of eastern Ukraine. U.S. President Donald Trump plans to sign an executive order to rename the Department of Defense the Department of War. A White House official said it is a move that would put Trump's stamp on the government's biggest organization. The order would authorize the Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth, the Defense Department and the officials to use the secondary titles such as the Secretary of War, the Department of War, and the Deputy Secretary of War in official correspondence and public communications. Two powerful aftershocks shook eastern Afghanistan in a span of 12 hours, triggering the fears of more deaths and destruction in a region where about 2,200 people died in quakes in 4 days. The details follow. Two powerful aftershocks shook eastern Afghanistan in a span of 12 hours, triggering fears of more deaths and destruction on Friday in a region where about 2,200 people died in quakes in 4 days. Survivors in the earthquake-prone region are scrambling for basic amenities, as the United Nations and the other agencies warn of a critical need for funds, food, medical supplies and shelter, with the World Health Organization seeking funds of $4 million. The latest aftershocks follow 2 earthquakes that ravaged the South Asian nation, crushed by war, poverty and shrinking aid. The Taliban administration estimated 2,205 deaths and 3,640 injuries by Thursday. Continuous aftershocks hit the province of Nangarhar, and details of the damage were still being collected. Friday's earthquake of magnitude 5.4 struck the southeast at a depth of 10 kilometers, hours after one late on Thursday night. The week's first earthquake of magnitude 6, just minutes before midnight on Sunday, was one of Afghanistan's deadliest, unleashing damage and destruction in the provinces of Nangarhar and Kunar when it struck at a shallow depth of 10 kilometers. A second quake of magnitude 5.5 on Tuesday caused panic and interrupted rescue efforts as it sent rocks sliding down the mountains and cut off roads to villages in the remote areas. With houses built mostly of dry masonry, stone and timber, some families prefer to stay in the open rather than return home as a precaution against the aftershocks. Japan's Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba welcomed the U.S. President Donald Trump's signing of an order to implement the lower tariffs on the automobiles and the other Japanese imports as a step that addressed the uncertainty for key industries. He said that the tariff negotiations between Tokyo and Washington was the top priority for the government, adding that his country has put all the effort into achieving an agreement in the best possible way as soon as possible. The reduction to 15% from the previous 25% was agreed between the two sides on July the 22nd. And this brings us to the end of the news bulletin for today. Thank you for watching and goodbye.